Hello, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for attending today. We're about to start. So if you want to leave in the chat where are you from and from where are you watching us, we are happy to have you all here. So we have Brianna with us today, and the picture is old because today Zach told us he was not able to attend, but Brianna is gonna be doing his presentation, so no worries. The topic is the same, right?
Yes.
We're talking about tax-free real estate investing. So we encourage you to write down your questions during the presentation in case you have. So Brianna is able to answer them. You can use the chat box or the Q&A box. So she makes sure to answer them as soon as possible. Okay, so welcome to Real Estate IQ. Your deal is our mission, and we are deal maker and dream maker. And we provide the best real estate solutions committed to help one more person to win. So make your deals come true. These are the solutions that we provide. This is to streamline your deal making process. So we offer off-market leads, EVA, CMA, custom leads mining, and virtual assistants. So if you're looking for more, please try our exclusive membership. These are our social media accounts where you can follow us as well. We are in Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, and you can use the QR codes that appear below of each icon, so you can join us in our community. And you can also use the QR code that appears on the right side of the screen in case you want to subscribe to our newsletter so you don't miss any of our weekly webinars and in-person events. You can also get a free 30-minute in-depth consultation of Real Estate IQ's services with one of our experts by scheduling it now, scanning the QR code that appears on the screen, or answering the poll that should appear on your screen as well, or using the email address that you can see on the screen. This is a very short video of what we do. Okay, so I don't want to make you lose more time. Thank you again, everyone, for attending, and thank you, Brianna, for being with us today. I hope everyone enjoys the webinar, and feel free to write down your questions. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I have shared my screen, so I hope everyone can see that okay. But we're going to go ahead and dive right into it. I do encourage any questions you have throughout the webinar. I'm happy to answer those questions live just so you don't forget it. So don't feel the need to holster it. Go ahead and let me know what those are as we move along, just so I can make sure all of your questions are answered as we move through the presentation material. But as you may know, our topic today is self-directed IRAs. So we're going to talk about exactly what a self-directed IRA is, some of the opportunities that are out there with self-directing, as well as how some of these tax strategies have actually helped our clients through a case study that we're going to show you. So we're going to talk a lot in detail about that. There are some things, especially when it comes to your specific situation, that we may not dive into today. So I'm going to end out the presentation with some contact information for myself and our IRA specialist team. That way, if you have any more specific questions about your personal situation, we can certainly dive into a free consultation on that as well. But just for those of you who may not be familiar with Quest Trust Company, we want to talk a little bit about who we are today. We are currently the largest operating self-directed IRA custodian in Texas. So I'm actually speaking to you today from our Houston office. We do also have an office in Dallas and Austin as well. And so throughout the country, we have about 20,000 active investor clients. So just because we have our physical locations in Texas does not mean we're solely focused on Texas investors. We have clients all over the place, investing all over the world. So you certainly don't have a limitation just based off of your location. We're actually celebrating our 20th anniversary this year. And over that 20 years, we've accumulated about $2.83 billion in assets under our administration. This includes cash. This will also include real estate, private lending notes, cryptocurrency, really anything that falls under the alternative investing market. And so that's going to be anything that's not publicly traded in most cases. Of that 2.83 billion, 415 million of that is sitting in undirected cash. So most of this actually falls within two categories. The first category is the individuals who have opened the account and moved money in because they know they want to invest in the private market, but they just don't know yet where to park it. And so we host events and things of that nature to get our clients out there in front of some of the opportunities that may present themselves. Now, the other category that this undirected cash sits in actually is for individuals who have made investments and they've received that money back into their account and now they are awaiting direction for where they want to park it next. And so they are looking through groups just like Real Estate IQ to determine where they do want to funnel their money to in the future. And so this is certainly an opportunity for those of you out there who may work with IRA investors or want to in the future. Like I mentioned, we do have 3 physical locations. Across those locations, about 120 employees. A little under a third of those employees are certified IRA services professionals. So week-long exam that our representatives will take in order to talk to you about the things that we talk to you about every single day. And this is one of the things that really allows Quest to stand out as an institution. If you yourself have worked with other IRA custodians, maybe you're a little bit more familiar with sitting on hold for long periods of time or not being able to connect with the proper departments. We are specialized in things like customer service for that reason. I do see a question from you, Patricia, regarding whether it's only in Texas. It's not. That is where our physical locations are. So that's where most of our in-person events will take place. But our clients are all over the country. So you are not limited to that just based off of you being in another state. So just to answer on that one. Before we move forward, I do want to provide a quick disclaimer. We are not tax, legal, or investment advisors. We on this side are here for educational purposes only. So if you do seek the advice of a CPA or an attorney, we do ask that you contact those respective individuals who may have a better look at your full financial picture and can properly advise on things of that nature. So just that quick disclaimer before we move into the fun stuff. One of the, I'd say, more common questions that we get when we go through this process is, what is the difference between my IRA at a place like Fidelity and a self-directed IRA? And really that terminology is just marketing. And that means that whenever you open a self-directed IRA, you're really opening the same type of IRA you would anywhere else. So we'll go over some of those account types, but just to mention 2 right off the bat, that would be something like a traditional or a Roth IRA. And so with that being said, there is no legal distinction between what classifies a self-directed IRA or a managed IRA or an annuity IRA, for example. They all fall under the same tax code. What really changes is the custodian that you're working with and what they will allow you to invest into. So for example, I mentioned Fidelity earlier. Obviously, they focus on publicly traded investments like stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and Quest will focus on privately purchased investments like real estate, private lending, syndications, pretty much anything not publicly traded. So you notice that the IRA and the code that it's ruled by remains the same. The biggest difference is the specialization of your custodian. So by going through a self-directed IRA custodian like Quest, you're truly allowing yourself to diversify, which is one of the larger benefits of these types of plans, is that you can put your money to work in the public market and in the private market through a company like Quest. So being able to take advantage of some of the opportunity that is in the private market that maybe gets overlooked a lot, huge advantage of these types of plans. However, no matter which type of investing you're doing, private or public, the benefit of tax savings shows through with any IRA investment. If you are considering, why should I use my retirement money to make an investment when I may have this money sitting in my bank account myself? Well, you really need to consider some of the tax savings that go along with that. And so these tax savings are referring to whenever you put money into a plan, some plans, you can deduct that money from your taxes. It also refers to the fact that some of these accounts grow tax deferred, or even better, some of these accounts grow tax free. That means that there is an instance in which you earn money back and then Uncle Sam never really takes his piece. So we'll dive into some of the account types that have that after tax benefit. Now, these last two, I think, are very more specific to private investing. Social investing is one that I love to talk about, and it really refers to being able to choose the markets in which you invest. Now, when I say markets in this context, what I'm talking about is the communities. You're able to find a place out there that you hold close to your heart, whether it's somewhere you grew up, somewhere your kids may live, or maybe somewhere that you're going in the future. You can purchase a property. You can employ local business owners in order to rehab that property or to fix it up or to manage it, or a number of things that you could potentially do to pump money into that local economy with your retirement dollars. So this is something that we see individuals growing a little bit more fond of, is being able to really make that difference with some of their investments. And the last one I think is fairly obvious, especially for those of you on right now who are already real estate investors or who have already put so much hours and time into learning about what real estate can do for you. This truly allows you to invest into an asset class that you are more familiar with, that you know a little bit better than the stock market. About 65 to 70% of our clients are already real estate investors. These are people who have made these investments outside of the account. They've grown familiar with what their resources need to look like and also what their returns are going to be, which is a little bit more assurance than your typical stock market investment can offer you. And so being able to invest in what you know best is truly one of the larger reasons we see people making that transition. And so I'm going to dismiss this one because I see it as a comment at the top. And then we are going to move on to the types of plans. And so, sorry, that's going to happen just a few times. My lights are motion censored. But the personal plans are the most common plans that we see. And these are your traditional IRAs and your Roth IRAs. And typically, one of the next questions we get after we talk about what a self-directed IRA is and what it can do is, well, what type of account should I open? And so one of the larger considerations here is, do you want to pay the taxes now on the money that's going into the plan, or do you want to pay the taxes later on the money that's coming out of the plan, right? So a traditional IRA, for those of you not familiar, this is typically a pre-tax plan. This means that when you are contributing money out of pocket to that plan, you are in most cases taking a tax deduction. This is true of most of the employer 401ks that you may have contributed to over your lifetime. Yourself or your employer are taking a tax deduction for putting money into it. So this money is pre-taxed, meaning that when you invest it and you grow the amount in that account, well, maybe you're not taxed right away. And so this is classified as tax deferred. However, when you decide to pull money out of the traditional IRA for personal use, that's when you are typically taxed. And it's just taxed as regular income, right? But you're able to defer those taxes until maybe a later date in which you may be in a lower tax bracket. So this is the ideal situation with the traditional IRA, where you're in a high income now, and you're able to deduct more from your taxes by contributing to this, contributing to your 401k. Over time, then you can grow those funds. And later in retirement, when you're in a lower tax bracket, not everyone will be, but should that be your financial picture, this really will benefit you because you can now pull that money out and pay a lower tax rate than you would if you would have paid those taxes whenever you had higher income. So a fairly straightforward idea with the traditional IRA is just that you expect to be in a lower income bracket whenever you retire. Now, the Roth IRA, it operates the exact opposite. What that means is that the Roth IRA, when you contribute money to it, this is going to be money that you've already paid taxes on. So you're not deducting anything from it. We call this paycheck money, essentially what you've been paid from that W-2 or 1099. Whenever the taxes have already been taken out of it, you're going to put that money into a Roth IRA. If you can do that, then this money now will grow tax-free. Now, if you want to go ahead and take the money out the next day, the great thing about the Roth is that it's essentially a glorified savings account. This means that you can take all of your contributions to the plan, meaning what you've taken out of your back pocket and put into it at any point in time, tax and penalty free. However, the two buckets of money that you can't touch right away are going to be your conversions, which refers to transitioning pre-tax money, like a traditional IRA or 401k, to a Roth. And the other bucket of money you can't touch right away will be your earnings. So anything that you're making off of the investments, you may not be able to access it right away, but as soon as you meet the qualifications for a distribution from a Roth IRA, then you can take your conversions out, you can take your earnings out completely tax-free. And briefly, the two main qualifications that we see is that you've turned 59 and a half, which is what the IRS designates is retirement age. And the second qualification is that you've had and contributed to a Roth IRA for 5 tax years. So that means if you were a 21-year-old out there back in the day and you contributed $1 to your Roth IRA and then you took it out the next day or maybe a year or two from then, well, you started that clock already. It starts as soon as you put $1 into any Roth IRA you've ever had. And so, well, this is one of the reasons we always say you should get started on that Roth as soon as possible. Start that 5-year clock because then you're only waiting until you hit that age of 59 and a half. And then you can start pulling everything that you've made in that Roth account without taxes ever being taken out of it. So this is a really great tool, certainly something that's overlooked because a lot of people prefer to have that immediate benefit of the tax deduction today. But if you really believe in the investments that you're making and you believe that there will be large growth over time, it is certainly worth considering making that transition to a Roth or starting to contribute to a Roth to build those funds up, invest them, and let yourself retire without having to pay taxes on the income that you're receiving from these retirement accounts that you build up your entire life. So like I said, the main consideration, pay your taxes now or pay your taxes later. We do have a class as well that I encourage you to check out. It talks about a Roth conversions, exactly what that would mean for you, some of the pros and the cons of doing it as well. So a really, really great class. You can find it on our website. And it does look like we have a question. How long has Quest been in the system as a custodian for IRAs? We are currently celebrating our 20th year anniversary. So this is going to be 20 years for us since we've established ourselves as a self-directed IRA custodian. However, prior to that, our founders were working with Entrust Retirement, Entrust Retirement, who custodied accounts all over the board. And so they were working actually at a branch of Entrust, and then they took that branch and developed Quest from it, which is a more specialized trust company than Entrust was at that time. So us as an institution in Quest's name, 20 years. Our founders, however, have been in this retirement industry for much longer than that. So I hope that answers your question. And then we are going to move on to the next plan type that we hold, which is our employer plans. This is exactly what it sounds like. Think of that 401k that your job offers to you if you work a W-2 job, and where they contribute, and then you as the employee also contribute. So it's similar to that. But one of the main differences with these plans is that this is typically for these IRAs and the solo 401k are typically for self-employed individuals who maybe have a small business, or in terms of the solo 401k, that they are have their own business, but they are the only employee outside of their spouse. So there is some restrictions on who can open these plans. It typically requires you to have self-employment income in order for you to contribute. However, the contribution limits are much higher than the traditional and the Roth IRA. For example, the traditional and Roth for 2023 is going to be a $6,500 contribution limit for this year. So you're only able to put that much in there. Now, if you're over 50, they give you an additional $1,000 catch-up contribution, which is a total of $7,500 that you can put into either a traditional or a Roth, or split between the two. That is a cumulative contribution. Now, these employer plans, should you qualify, should you have that self-employment income, the maximum limit for 2023 is $66,000. So if you are an individual who has a business and does not have a retirement plan set up for that business, the IRS does incentivize you to open that type of plan for your business and start saving for your retirement, and for the SEP and the simple, potentially your employee's retirement as well. And so that 66,000 is a maximum. It's going to also take into account how much money you've made that year. So in most cases, we don't see clients hitting that 66,000 maximum, but sometimes it does happen. It is all based off your income. And if you're curious about how much you're going to be able to contribute to a plan like this as a self-employed individual, talk to a CPA, allow them to run the numbers for you. They can give you an exact figure as to how much you could potentially funnel into these plans. Something more specific, I think, to the solo 401k is going to be that this can actually hold both traditional and Roth funds. That means that if you are putting money into a solo 401k, you can either choose to deduct it when you put it in, or you can choose to leave this as an after-tax contribution. You can also do both within the account. So you can have a pre-tax bucket and you can have an after-tax bucket. And this will allow you to take advantage of those tax deductions today, while also at the same time taking advantage of some tax-free growth. So the solo 401k is an equally important account, something that if you do qualify for can be a really amazing tool to grow your wealth for the long term. And so talking about this being a qualifying plan, I do want to link this class. It's actually going to go through each of the qualifications for these 3 employer plans, so you can determine whether or not you should have that conversation with your CPA. And if so, you can not only hold all of these plans with Quest, but they can all be funneled into something like real estate. And so this is a really, really great tool out there for those who do have your businesses, maybe planning on starting a business, and you are looking for a way to continue to funnel more money into a retirement plan. One other note on that end is that you can max out your traditional and Roth IRA, and you can max out your employer plan in the same year. The contribution limits do not affect each other. So if you qualify for the maximum of an employer plan, you could potentially be funneling $66K into a SEP IRA, as well as $6,500 into a traditional or a Roth account. And so this will allow you to accumulate the largest amount of money into any type of retirement plan you can use down the line. So certainly some considerations for those out there that may fall into this category. Now, last but certainly not least, as far as the plan types that Quest holds and that can be self-directed, we call this category our specialty plans. And so I'm going to touch first on the Coverdell Education Savings Account. This is another qualifying plan, and the limits are a little bit stricter. So with the Coverdell Education Savings Account, this can only be set up for an individual under the age of 18. The contribution limits are $2,000 per child per year. So if you have one child and you set up 2 Coverdell Education Savings accounts, you can still only contribute $2,000 between the two on an annual basis. So it is fairly low. However, if you are utilizing a Coverdell Education Savings Account for those contributions to grow those funds for your child's education, well, all of the money can come out of that type of plan tax-free, as long as it's for those qualified educational expenses. So this account works a little bit more similar to a Roth IRA because the money does not get deducted from your taxes when you put it in. But whenever you take it out, it will be tax-free as long as it's a qualified distribution. So some similar language there with the Roth IRA being that qualified distribution and then the non-tax deductible funds going into it. So like I said, a little bit more of a specific account. One of the larger things to note with this one is that a 529 plan cannot roll into an education savings account. However, an education savings account can roll into a 529 plan. So there are people out there who are actively contributing to those 529 plans, and maybe you have some money sitting in that, but maybe you want to start also contributing to an education savings account. Later down the line, you can consolidate that once you've grown it through real estate or what have you, because most 529 plans cannot be invested into things like real estate. So it allows you a little bit more leeway in what you can do with the funds as far as investing goes for your children, your niece, your nephew, any person or individual under the age of 18 for their educational expenses. So while it's a little bit restricting, there is certainly some advantages to it as well. And I'm gonna lead off with the health savings account. This is an account we call the best of both worlds. This is because money goes into a health savings account, tax deductible. So when you put money in, you take that money off of your taxes for the year. And then for the money coming out, the money comes out to you completely tax-free for qualified expenses. So there is a little asterisk there, is that you can't just pull it out for any little thing. It does need to be for a qualified health expense. However, the list of what is qualified health expenses is fairly open. There's a lot of things that you wouldn't think would qualify, but actually do. And so I'm going to link this class down here. It's going to talk a little bit about the tax code that rules what is a health savings expense and what is a Coverdell education savings expense. And so it'll go into those details just a little bit more. One of the bigger things about the health savings account is, again, not everyone qualifies. You do need to be covered under a high deductible healthcare plan. You need to not be a dependent. And in this case, there are some other qualifications that you could typically fall under. It's important to speak with your insurance provider to determine if you are HSA eligible. And if so, you can open this plan. The contribution limits, I believe for this year, about $3,800 and some change if you are the only person covered. If you are covered with your spouse or your children, then double that. That's how much you're able to put into the plan. And if you are covering other members of your family, this can also be used for their health expenses as well. So a very important and highly underutilized account. Certainly something to look into if you do qualify. Again, both of these plans can be put into real estate. They can be lenders on a private lending note. They can invest into cryptocurrency and a number of different things that are not publicly traded. So this is as equally important as your traditional and your Roth IRA, but maybe just a little bit more restrictive when it comes to things like qualifications. So I kind of mentioned this throughout, but all of these plans can be self-directed. So you're not limited to just the ones you're familiar with, like a traditional or a Roth. It can also be a SEP or a simple, an HSA or an ESA. And not only can these invest separately, meaning that, the HSA is the sole lender on a note, but these plans can also be partnered together. So if you have a Roth IRA, your spouse has a traditional IRA, your children have education savings accounts, maybe you have an HSA out there, all of these accounts can be pooled together on a promissory note or to purchase a property. These is known as a partnered strategy, essentially exactly what it sounds like, where you are able to list each individual account on the note, and then the percentage of ownership is respective to how much each of these accounts can put up. So for our example here in the partnered vesting, these accounts had 50 and 50, right? So the total amount in this example was 100,000. John Smith had 50,000 of that. Jane Smith had 50,000 of that. And so on the promissory note, we see that both accounts are listed to a 50% interest, which means that all income and all expenses are going to be split along that line as well. And so it can be done, but that's one of the more important rules, is that you want to, once you divide that interest on the front end, you want to stick to that very strictly throughout the full lifetime of that investment. So very important that you know what to do in the event that you do want to pull multiple of these accounts. And these don't just have to be your family, they can be any other IRA out there. And even better, these can even be an individual, maybe not an IRA, but maybe a business partner, a friend, another member of your family who would like to go in on the deal with you, but may not have that money in an IRA. This can also be done that method as well. So we talked about some of the fun stuff, but there is some important rules when it comes to what you can do in an IRA. They fall into these three categories, right? And the first one is people restrictions. So who the IRA can transact with. Transaction restrictions, meaning who or what these people can do with the IRA, more importantly, what they cannot do with the IRA. And the last one is investment restrictions. And so these people restrictions are going to fall to the account holder, their spouse, their children, and their parents. What does that mean? That means when we come down to transactions, the account holder, their spouse, their children, their parents, all the way up and down that family tree, these people cannot take a loan from the IRA. They cannot purchase property from the IRA. They cannot rent property from the IRA. And they also cannot physically live or benefit from an IRA-owned property. So this is a very large restriction here that a lot of people don't fully understand whenever we first get that call. So it's important to know that the way the IRS has set this up is that you are benefiting from this account solely in retirement. So you're not purchasing a homestead property with the IRA, because that could be considered what is called a prohibited transaction, because you are now benefiting from your qualified money today. And so they want to keep this as a strict investment for your retirement for the long term. And they're going to say, if you are purchasing a property, it needs to be rented by a third party, and it needs to be eventually sold to a third party if that's the road that you go. You also typically can't invest into your immediate family's companies. So if they are a syndicator, for example, you cannot invest into a company that your spouse manages. And so these are very important restrictions when it comes to some of the ideas that you may have come up during this webinar so far as to what you can do, is that you do want to make sure that you are coloring within the lines with every investment. And if you are unsure, speak with an attorney who knows and is familiar with IRA structures and can properly advise us to what you're doing is going to be deemed as you coloring within the lines. In a best case scenario, everything is at an arm's length reach from you. You are investing with other business partners, other people in the industry, and you are not putting your money into something that is potentially benefiting you today. Now, the last one I want to touch on, actually the shortest category of restriction, is going to be what you can't invest into as far as assets go. There's two main things. The first one is going to be a life insurance contract. You cannot invest into that with your IRA. And the second thing is going to be a collectible or art or vintage vehicles, things like that. Think about anything with that doesn't have a very hard value. The IRS requires valuations every year. So if you're investing into things like art or collectibles, it may be a little bit harder to value, or that value may be a little bit subjective. And so to circumvent things like that, they just don't allow that type of investment within the account. So those are the two investments that you just can't do within the account. But it's important, of course, to follow up on people and transaction restrictions, just so you know that the investment that you're looking to make is within the IRS guidelines for what you can do with the plan. So all three important categories to familiarize yourself with before you move forward into something like this. All right, so an even funner topic, what can I invest into with my self-directed IRA? Now I'm going to provide a list for us here, but this is by no means an exhaustive list. This is going to be 3 of the main categories that we see invested into through our platform, which is going to be, of course, real estate. This is what the company was built out to do, is to purchase real estate, to hold that, whether that may be a tax lien, option contracts, or if you're going to foreclosure, single family homes, whatever that may look like for you. We are able to process that through our personal real estate department, who will work with your title company, who will work directly with your seller to make sure that the IRA is properly listed as the buyer on anything that may need to be signed off on. So this is the primary reason Quest as an institution was built, and this is really where our specialty falls. However, through the years, we've noticed an uptick in these final 2 categories. The second one I want to touch on being private entities. This is going to refer to, for the most part, syndications, funds, private stock, but typically it's structured through an LLC or a joint venture. Those are the most common structures that we see. And so private entities encompasses a whole lot of different structures out there, but it's one of the more common these days investments than anything else. We probably process more private entities investments on a daily basis than we do real estate or private lending. And that's because it's just so extremely passive. For those of you out there who may own single family homes or manage those types of assets, you know how hands-on and demanding that can be. And so with something like a syndication or a fund, this is a way in which you, of course, go through the due diligence process, but essentially after you've sent the money out for the investment, you can essentially set it and forget it. It's about a 3 to 5 year commitment in most cases. And so for IRA investors, it really does hit that sweet spot of not being needed on an everyday basis to comb over what this investment is going to look like for you day to day. Instead, it allows you a more hands-off approach of investing that same money into the private market. So for this reason, we do see that as a more popular investment these days. However, we have clients who are solely committed to real estate investing. They have done it their entire time with Quest, and they continue to do it because that's what they know best, and that is what works for them. More importantly, they have the network to support it. Through groups like Real Estate IQ, you can find the individuals, the companies, and the resources that you would need to be successful in that industry. And so that's one of the larger key points of that process. The last one is going to be promissory notes. So whenever you hear other people talking about being the bank, this is exactly what they mean. You can lend out of the IRA just as if you were a bank. You get to determine how much you're lending out, the interest rate, the maturity date. The terms of the note are fully up to you, and the structure of that can look a million different ways, just depending on your goals and who you're working with, being like a borrower or maybe another company that you're lending to. And so this is another avenue that you could explore if you are looking more so to, again, a little bit more of a passive route. This is going to be an interesting avenue for you to look into should you be comfortable and, again, have the network to support an investment such as this. So how is it done? This is just a very high overview of the process. If you do schedule a consultation after the fact, happy to walk into this a little bit more in depth with what your accounts look like and what that timeline will be for you. But first, you do open up a Quest account. You're going to fund that account in one of 3 ways, or maybe multiple. But most cases, you are either rolling over from a 401k or a 403b. Maybe teachers or other military out there, you may be rolling over a TRS or TSP account. The second one is going to be transferring from another IRA, whether that's a traditional or a Roth, maybe a rollover IRA that you have out there somewhere. One of your methods could be to transfer that in. And finally, making a contribution to the plan. This is probably the least common way that we see people moving money in. However, it is equally as important because you want to continue to grow those funds not only through investments, but also through contributions if you do qualify. So those are the main 3 ways we see our clients funding once they've opened the account. Step number 3 is to locate your investment. Again, utilize your resources in your network to find an investment that you think suits you and your long-term goals. We have forms that we'll have you complete to approve these investments. And then once we are done reviewing the forms, we are going to fund that investment within 24 to 48 hours. It takes us 1 or 2 days to look everything over, get the green light from our quality control team, and then release the funds to the title company, to your borrower, to your syndicator, whatever that may look like for you. So we are going to go into a case study. I know we have looks like about 20 minutes. Again, please share your questions. I will go over kind of key points at the very end of this, but I do really, really like this case study for the strategy that it highlights. So this is going to be partnering, which I mentioned briefly earlier, and these individuals invested into a property that they wanted to fix and flip. So in this case, Robert and his wife both had Roth IRAs with Quest. They also had a Coverdell education savings account for their 9-year-old son. So they opened these accounts up, they moved some funds into it from other sources, and then they were now looking for a property to invest it into. So what they've done is they've located this property that had been on the market for a few months. It was located in their neighborhood, so it was something that they drove past regularly. They had their eye on for a little bit, and now they had the mechanism to invest. So they did a tour of the property and decided that this would be a good house to fix and flip. And so they wanted to move forward with the purchase, and to do so, these are some of the details of the property. That the purchase price was about $100,000. They estimated about $30,000 in repairs. So the total cost that they projected for this property was $130,000. Now, the way this was divvied up on the contract is Robert had 60% of the funds that he was willing to put forward into the property. Robert had additional money in his IRA. However, their goal was to grow all of their accounts. And so this is why Robert and Linda only used a portion of the funds that they had in their account, so they could also include Max on this deal. So Robert has now put up 60% of the purchase price. Linda is going to put up 35%, and Max is going to put up 5%. And so this is now how the contract is going to read. They're going to make that offer to purchase the property with their 2 Roth IRAs as well as the ESA. And this is exactly how the buyer will read on the contract. It is going to list the formal title of the account, which for any account just follows that same format. Quest Trust Company, FBO, meaning for the benefit of, your name and your account number with Quest. And then you will want to, of course, list the actual percentage of interest that you will have based off how much you can put up. And so they're going to put down that offer on the property, and they're going to explicitly list these 3 accounts that will be participating in the purchase. So they went through with the purchase, they fixed and flipped the house, and within 4 months, they were able to sell the house for $189,900. So after closing costs, it was about $180,000. We're using rounder numbers here to make it more clean. But this now presents to them a tax-free gain of $50,000. Now, why tax-free? That's because of the account types they used, the Roth IRA and the education savings account. These accounts both allow tax-free distributions for qualified reasons. And so because of that, they have now gained this amount of money in tax-free income. So this is how it was split up. Again, note that this is going to be based off of how much each party could put up. So Robert's Roth IRA received $30,000. Linda's Roth IRA received $17,500, and Max's Coverdell education savings account received $2,500. And again, note the asterisk for qualified educational expenses. So that is what the ESA is set up to do. Any income that you are generating within it should go towards those expenses. So what is the next step? We are going to have a promotion in order for you to waive your account opening fee. I'm going to put up the contact that I have in just a moment. Once you have opened the account, can help you move that money into a vehicle that you trust, that you control, which I think is one of the larger reasons, again, that we see people transitioning is for that control. And then it will be time for you to make your investment. Again, these accounts are self-directed, so we do await your direction for these investments. Unfortunately, the money does just sit here like a rock. We don't have any cash balance minimum, so you don't earn interest on the funds, but you do start to earn money when you decide what you're going to invest into. And so I am going to throw my contact information up here on the screen for you. If you scan the QR code, it will take you to my calendar. We can schedule a call and talk a little bit more in depth about your personal situation. Or if you just have questions about self-directed IRAs or other IRA investors out there, I can help talk with you about some of the events we host, some of the webinars that we do as well. And as always, you can reach us too at that listed phone number during business hours, which for us, Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 5:30 Central Time. You can always reach an IRA specialist at that number. So if you have any questions, anything that pops up, feel free to give us a call. We are all very happy to help out where we can. And with that said, I didn't see any questions pop up, but I do want to kind of open it up if there are any questions out there that maybe I did not go into enough depth on. And it doesn't sound like we do. Well, we can go ahead and close it out. My name is Brianna Clayton, so I work with Quest. Like I mentioned, if you want to take a look back at the webinar, I do believe it's being recorded, so I'm not sure if they'll be sending that out, but you'll have all my information there. So I'm happy to answer any questions that may come up for you after the fact. And then of course, and thank you for Patricia for coming, and thanks everyone for taking some time after your out of your evening today to listen into this. So I certainly appreciate everyone.